The Regal Hotel's polished marble floors had witnessed decades of wealth and privilege, but they'd never seen anything like Madame Lu, a Chinese millionaire whose expensive luggage couldn't buy respect from staff who refused to understand her. Invisible among them moved Tiana Jackson, a black housekeeper everyone overlooked despite her hidden fluency in Mandarin. When a jade phoenix pendant connected these two unlikely allies, no one suspected this simple act would expose generations of fraud and stolen legacy. As Tiana translated Lu's first words, the powerful men who'd built fortunes on buried truths felt their first tremor of fear. They'd soon learn that history's silenced voices were finally ready to speak, and the hotel's elegant facade couldn't contain the justice about to be unleashed. The Regal Hotel stood like a gleaming monument to luxury in the heart of Manhattan, its polished brass revolving doors constantly spinning with the comings and goings of the wealthy and influential. Inside the staff-only break room, 3 employees huddled around a small table, their voices hushed despite being on break. "I'm telling you, Tom's about to lose his mind," said Rebecca, a front desk associate with perfectly manicured nails and not a blonde hair out of place. "This VIP arriving today has made more special requests than anyone I've ever seen." Mark, a bellhop in his crisp maroon uniform, leaned forward. "What kind of requests?" "Everything from specific room temperature settings down to the quarter degree, to demanding all synthetic materials be removed from the suite." Rebecca shook her head. "And get this, she specifically requested that no flowers with strong scents be placed anywhere near her floor." "Celebrities," muttered Heather, the third employee, rolling her eyes as she adjusted her housekeeping uniform. "They think the world revolves around them." The break room door swung open as Mr. Eaton, the hotel manager, poked his head in. His perpetually worried expression had deepened into genuine concern. "Front desk team, we need all hands. Our VIP has arrived early, and there seems to be some communication difficulty." The Blacktown car pulled up to the entrance, and the doorman rushed to open the vehicle's door. From within emerged a slender woman in her 50s, dressed in an immaculately tailored Chanel suit, her silver-streaked black hair pulled back in an elegant chignon. Her appearance was refined, but there was something peculiar about her luggage. Alongside modern designer pieces were 2 weathered leather trunks that looked like relics from another era. "Welcome to the Regal Hotel, ma'am," the doorman said. With a practiced smile, the woman merely nodded, her expression inscrutable behind oversized Gucci sunglasses. She gestured to her luggage, speaking rapidly in Mandarin that none of the staff understood. "It the front desk," Rebecca's professional smile faltered as the woman approached. "Good afternoon. Welcome to the Regal. May I have your name, please?" The woman removed her sunglasses, revealing intelligent eyes that crinkled slightly at the corners. She spoke again in Mandarin, her tone suggesting she expected to be understood. Rebecca glanced helplessly at her colleague. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't understand. Do you speak English?" The woman reached into her purse and produced a small notepad. On it was written in elegant script, "Madame Lu." She pointed to the name and then gestured around the lobby as if asking a question. "Yes, Madame Lu. We've been expecting you," Rebecca said with evident relief. She typed rapidly into her computer. "I have your reservation right." "Oh." Her smile dimmed. "It seems there's been a mix-up. We have you scheduled for tomorrow, not today." Madame Lu tilted her head, clearly not understanding. Rebecca tried again, speaking slowly and loudly as if volume might bridge the language gap. "Your room. Tomorrow. Not today." The Chinese woman's expression shifted from neutral to mildly annoyed. She tapped her watch and shook her head firmly, pointing again to her name on the paper and then to the floor beneath her feet. "She's saying she's supposed to be here today," Mark whispered unnecessarily. "I know that," Rebecca hissed back before addressing Madame Lu again. "We'll sort this out immediately. Please, have a seat in our lounge while we prepare your suite." Madame Lu remained standing, pulling out her phone. She showed Rebecca a confirmation email with today's date clearly displayed, though the rest was in Chinese characters. "I see the problem," Rebecca said, mortified. "Let me fix this right away. We'll have your room ready within the hour, Madame Lu. My sincere apologies." While Rebecca scrambled to find available accommodations, Madame Lu stood stiffly in the center of the lobby, her belongings arranged neatly beside her. The antique trunks particularly drew curious glances from passers-by. William Barnes, the concierge, approached with his most obsequious smile. "Madam," he said with a slight bow, "perhaps I can assist you while you wait?" Lou reached into her purse and withdrew an ornate red envelope. Speaking rapidly in Mandarin as she held it out to him, William's eyes widened at the envelope. A traditional Chinese hongbao, often containing money as a gift. He immediately misinterpreted the gesture. "Oh no, ma'am," he said, backing away slightly. "That's very generous, but I cannot accept bribes." He whispered the last word, looking around nervously. "We'll help you regardless, I assure you." Lou pressed the envelope toward him more insistently, her voice becoming more urgent as she tried to explain something. "Please, that's not necessary," William said, growing uncomfortable. He gestured toward the front desk. "They're working on your room right now. No extra incentives required." Lou finally gave up with a frustrated sigh, returning the envelope to her purse. As William walked away, he muttered to a colleague, "Be careful with that one. Tried to slip me cash right in the middle of the lobby." By mid-afternoon, the lobby had filled with more guests, and Madame Lou had become something of a spectacle. She sat alone in the tea lounge, her back straight as a rod, occasionally attempting to communicate with staff members who invariably smiled, nodded, and quickly found reasons to be elsewhere. That a pair of women in designer resort were sat nearby, their voices carrying just enough to be overheard. "That poor woman seems so confused," said the first, a redhead with a tennis bracelet. That caught the light with every gesture. "Probably her first time out of China," replied her friend with a dismissive wave. "You know how sheltered they can be. All that money and no idea how to behave in the real world. Do you think she's one of those factory owners? Or married to some Communist Party official? Who knows? They all got rich overnight while we weren't looking. Probably can't even use a proper fork." They tittered behind manicured hands, not bothering to lower their voices as Madame Lou sat stoically, her expression revealing nothing of whether she understood their cruelty or not. On the other side of the lobby, Tiana Jackson adjusted her housekeeping uniform and pushed her cart toward the elevator. At 28, she moved with quiet efficiency, her dark hair pulled back in a simple bun, her uniform pressed and immaculate. Unlike some of her co-workers, Tiana rarely engaged in workplace gossip, preferring to complete her duties with minimal fuss. She paused when she noticed the commotion surrounding the Chinese guest. Something in the woman's dignified isolation touched her. She recognized the barrier of language, the subtle discrimination disguised as hospitality. She'd seen it before, though rarely so blatantly in a place that prided itself on catering to international clientele. As she watched, Madame Lou stood abruptly and approached the front desk again, her movements betraying growing anxiety. She held out her phone, pointing urgently at something on the screen, then gestured toward the street. Mr. Eaton had joined the front desk staff by now, his thin patience clearly wearing thinner. "Ma'am, if you need a taxi, we can call one for you." "Is that what you need? A taxi?" He mimed, driving a car with exaggerated movements. Lou shook her head emphatically, pulling out some documents from her purse. She spread them on the counter, tapping one repeatedly and speaking with increasing urgency. "I think she needs to be somewhere," Rebecca suggested. "An appointment, maybe? Should we call an interpreter service?" asked Mark. Eaton checked his watch. "The service requires 2 hours notice, and they charge by the hour. Let's see if we can sort this out ourselves first." His eyes narrowed as he studied the agitated guest. For all we know, she could be confused. Some of these wealthy foreigners arrive completely unprepared for America. Tiana frowned at his dismissive tone, but continued pushing her cart toward the elevator. It wasn't her place to intervene. An hour later, Madame Lou sat in one of the lobby's plush armchairs, attempting to make a phone call. Her fingers trembled slightly as she dialed, but after a brief conversation, her face fell. She tried another number, then another, each attempt ending in visible disappointment. Rising suddenly, she crossed the lobby toward the concierge desk, her steps hurried. As she moved, something small fell from her jacket pocket, landing silently on the thick carpet. She didn't notice as she continued on her way, her attention focused on communicating her urgent need. Tiana, who had been refreshing the floral arrangement nearby, noticed the fallen object. Once Lu had moved away, she approached and carefully picked it up, a jade pendant in the shape of a phoenix, hanging from a delicate gold chain. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, the jade a deep, translucent green that spoke of exceptional quality. She looked up, intending to return it immediately, but Madame Lu was already engaged in another frustrating attempt at communication with William. Rather than interrupt, Tiana slipped the pendant into her pocket, resolving to return it at a more opportune moment as evening fell. The Regal's tea lounge transformed with soft lighting and the gentle notes of a live pianist. Most guests had departed for dinner reservations or evening entertainment, but Madame Lu remained, a solitary figure in a corner table. Tiana, finishing her shift, paused at the entrance to the lounge. The Chinese woman sat with perfect posture, a cup of tea growing cold before her, her gaze fixed on the darkening skyline beyond the window. There was something profoundly sad about the scene. This elegant, obviously wealthy woman, isolated by language and subtle prejudice in a hotel that prided itself on world-class service, the eye in her pocket. Tiana felt the weight of the jade pendant. She closed her fingers around it, feeling its smooth contours and the sharp edges of the phoenix's wings. The right thing would be to return it immediately, to approach the concierge or Mr. Eaton and have them handle it. But something stopped her. The dismissive way the staff had treated Madame Lu all day, the whispers, the assumptions. The pendant seemed too precious, too personal to hand over to people who had shown such little respect. Tiana watched as Lu dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief, a moment of vulnerability when she thought no one was watching. Whatever had brought this woman to the Regal was clearly important, perhaps even urgent, and no one had bothered to truly help her. With the jade phoenix clutched in her hand, Tiana made a decision and took her first step toward the lonely figure by the window. The tea lounge was quiet except for the gentle tinkling of the piano and the occasional clink of porcelain cups. Tiana approached Madame Lu's table with measured steps, her heart beating faster than she cared to admit. Years of hotel training had instilled in her a sense of invisible service. Do your job without being noticed, but now she was deliberately stepping into the spotlight. Lu didn't look up until Tiana stood directly before her table. When she did, her expression was one of polite disinterest, the kind reserved for service staff who were expected to simply perform their function and disappear. Tiana took a deep breath, opened her palm to reveal the jade pendant, and then, in perfect Mandarin, she said, "Ninjiu Lujiga ma, Liu Tai Tai? Is this yours, Madame Lu?" The transformation in Lu's face was instantaneous: shock, disbelief, and then a flood of naked emotion that cracked through her composed exterior like lightning through clouds. She reached out with trembling hands, not for the pendant, but for Tiana's wrists, which she grasped with surprising strength. "Ni hui shua zhongwen." You speak Chinese? Lu's voice was barely above a whisper, as if she feared speaking too loudly might break whatever spell had brought a Mandarin speaker to her. Tiana nodded, switching to the more formal register she'd learned during her years abroad. "Was I? Beijing Zhu Liang Nian." I lived in Beijing for 2 years. Lu's eyes filled with tears. She pulled Tiana down to sit in the chair opposite her, still clutching her hands. Words poured out in a torrent of Mandarin so rapid that Tiana had to concentrate to follow. "Thank heavens. I've been trying all day to explain. My phone doesn't work here, the documents I brought are being questioned, and I have an urgent appointment tomorrow morning that no one seems to understand. I was beginning to think I'd made a terrible mistake coming here." Tiana smiled gently, handing over the pendant. "I found this on the floor earlier. I thought it might be important to you." Lu accepted the phoenix with reverence, immediately fastening it around her neck. "It is more precious than you could know. Thank you." She studied Tiana's face with newfound interest. "What is your name? And how does a young American woman speak such excellent Mandarin?" "My name is Tiana Jackson, and it's a long story." Tiana was 16 when her mother, Dr. Elaine Jackson, received the cultural attaché position at the American Embassy in Beijing. As a career diplomat specializing in cultural exchange, Dr. Jackson had raised her children with an appreciation for languages and cultural immersion. "You're not just going to live in China," her mother had told Tiana and her younger brother Marcus. "You're going to become part of it for as long as we're there." That means language classes, local schools, and real friendships, not just hiding. In the expat bubble. For Tiana, those 2 years were transformative. Initially resistant to being uprooted from her Washington, D.C. high school, she found herself captivated by Beijing's blend of ancient tradition and frenetic modernity. She attended an international school where Mandarin was mandatory, but it was her friendship with her neighbor's daughter, May, that truly accelerated her learning. May's grandmother, a former literature professor, took a shine to the American girl trying so earnestly to master Mandarin. Under her tutelage, Tiana learned not just conversational Chinese but classical poetry, idioms, and the subtle cultural nuances that textbooks never covered. When her mother's posting ended, Tiana maintained her language skills through college, where she minored in East Asian studies. But life had taken unexpected turns after graduation, and now here she was, a housekeeper at the Regal, using her Mandarin for the first time in years. Fascinating, Lou said when Tiana finished her abbreviated life story. And now you work as a maid in this hotel? With your language skills and education? Tiana's smile tightened slightly. The economy hasn't been kind to liberal arts graduates. This job has good benefits, and I'm saving for graduate school. Lou nodded, understanding flickering in her eyes. Sometimes the path to our destiny takes unexpected detours. She glanced around the lounge, lowering her voice. Could you help me communicate with the hotel staff? I have several urgent matters to attend to, and I would compensate you generously for your time. There's no need for compensation, Tiana said quickly. I'm still on the clock, and helping guests is part of my job. Then I insist on speaking only through you from now on, Lou declared, rising from her seat with renewed determination. First, let's clear up this room confusion, and then I need assistance with several other matters. The front desk staff watched in astonishment as Tiana and Madame Lou approached together, engaged in fluid conversation. Rebecca, Tiana began. Madame Lou has been trying to explain that she has the correct reservation date. There was a miscommunication when the booking was made through her assistant. She needs access to her suite immediately, as she has important documents inside her luggage that are needed for a meeting tomorrow morning. Rebecca's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You speak Chinese? Mandarin, yes, Tiana replied calmly. Madame Lou would also like to know if the specific room temperature she requested has been set, as she is sensitive to heat due to a medical condition. Mr. Eaton appeared from his office, drawn by the unexpected development. What's happening? Here, Rebecca. Sir, Tiana is translating for our Chinese guest. Mr. Eaton's eyebrows shot up as he turned to study Tiana with new eyes. I wasn't aware we had any Mandarin speakers on staff. It wasn't in my job application requirements, Tiana said evenly. But I lived in Beijing for 2 years as a teenager. Lou spoke again, and Tiana translated. Madame Lou says she's very tired from her journey and would appreciate expedited check-in procedures. She also needs to send several urgent faxes and requires assistance with that. Of course, Mr. Eaton said, his demeanor transforming instantly to obsequious servility. Rebecca, please prepare Madame Lou's suite immediately. Use the Magnolia suite since it's ready now. William, assist with the luggage right away. He turned to Tiana. Jackson, since you've established rapport with our esteemed guest, please consider yourself temporarily reassigned to assist Madame Lou directly during her stay. Tiana nodded, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the whispers and stares from her colleagues. Word spread through the hotel staff like wildfire. The quiet black housekeeper spoke fluent Chinese and had somehow become the personal attendant to the mysterious VIP guest. By evening, the employee break room was buzzing with speculation. How convenient that she just happens to speak Chinese, said Heather, her voice dripping with suspicion. Bet she planned this whole thing to get out of cleaning toilets. Give it a rest, Heather, Mark replied. You're just jealous because Eaton's never going to pull you from housekeeping duties to assist a VIP. I'm not jealous, Heather snapped. I just think it's weird. She never mentioned speaking Chinese before. And did you see how that lady won't talk to anyone else now? It's like they've got some secret club going on. Rebecca, who had been listening silently, finally spoke up. You know what I think is weird? That none of us bothered to really help that woman all day. We just kept talking at her louder like she was stupid instead of trying to find a translator. Tiana's the only one who actually helped. The break room fell silent at this uncomfortable truth to eye in the Magnolia suite. Madame Lu unpacked her belongings with Tiana's assistance. The antique trunks revealed silk garments and carefully wrapped parcels that Lu handled with reverence. These have been in my family for generations, she explained, unwrapping a small porcelain vase with delicate blue brushwork. I could not trust them to shipping companies or customs handlers. They're beautiful, Tiana said sincerely. May I ask why you brought such precious items to New York? Lu paused, studying Tiana's face as if weighing how much to share. I am seeking something that was lost long ago. These items are connections to what I seek. She moved to the window, gazing out at the Manhattan skyline. I need information about historical properties in this city, particularly those built between 1930 and 1955. I need access to real estate archives, historical society records, and perhaps private galleries that specialize in East Asian art from that period. That's quite specific, Tiana observed. The New York Historical Society might be a good place to start, and the real estate records would be at the county clerk's office. Lu turned, her expression softening. You are very knowledgeable for someone so young. Tell me, what do you know about the history of this hotel? The Regal? It was built in 1952, I believe. It was one of several luxury hotels constructed during the post-war boom. Before that, I think this area had older buildings that were demolished to make way for new development. Something flickered in Lu's eyes. Yes, exactly. The post-war years changed this city dramatically. Many people lost their claims during that time of transition. She returned to her unpacking, suddenly brisk and businesslike. I will need your assistance for several weeks, if possible. Would your manager approve such an arrangement? If you request it specifically, I'm sure he would, Tiana replied. Mr. Eaton is very accommodating to valuable guests. Lu smiled, knowingly. Yes, I observed his transformation once you began translating. Money speaks its own universal language, doesn't it? She pulled a leather folio from one of the trunks and opened it on the desk. Come, look at these. Inside were yellowed maps of Manhattan with certain blocks highlighted in red ink. Handwritten notes in Chinese characters filled the margins, along with curious symbols that looked like family crests or seals. What are these? Tiana asked, studying the strange markings. Maps to a stolen memory, Lu said quietly, and clues to find my sister. Your sister is missing. Not my biological sister, a twin of sorts. Lu touched the phoenix pendant at her throat. This is only half of a pair. I seek its match, and the truth that was buried with it nearly 70 years ago. A knock at the door interrupted them. Tiana opened it to find Mr. Eaton, his smile strained. Jackson, a word please. In the hallway, his smile vanished. What exactly do you think you're doing? Helping our guest, sir, as you instructed. Helping, yes. Not spending hours in her suite looking at private documents. His voice lowered to a hiss. You're a housekeeper, not a concierge or a private secretary. Finish helping her unpack, then return to your regular duties. I've arranged for a professional translator to arrive tomorrow morning. Tiana kept her expression neutral. Of course, sir. I'll inform Madame Lu. When she relayed this information, Lu's reaction was immediate and fierce. Absolutely not. I will not work with some stranger. You understand my needs, and I trust you. She moved to the hotel phone. Please translate exactly what I say to your manager. 20 minutes later, a fuming Mr. Eaton informed Tiana that she would be assigned exclusively to Madame Lu for the duration of her stay, though he pointedly added that her regular duties would be waiting once the assignment ended. The next morning, despite Mr. Eaton's efforts, the translator who arrived at the Magnolia suite was promptly and unceremoniously dismissed by Lu, who refused to speak a single word to him. I apologize for any inconvenience, Tiana told the bewildered man as she escorted him out. But Madame Lu is particular about who she works with. Once they were alone, Lu beckoned Tiana to sit across from her at the suite's elegant writing desk. Her expression had changed overnight, becoming more guarded, more intense. I have not been entirely truthful with you, Tiana, she said quietly. I am not merely wealthy. I am here under a disguise of sorts. My family name is not really Lu, though it serves my purpose for now. I don't understand. My wealth, considerable as it is, comes from a legacy tainted by betrayal. My grandmother owned property in Manhattan, valuable property that was stolen from her through fraud and intimidation after World War II, when Chinese nationals were viewed with suspicion. Lu, or whatever her real name was, reached into her folio and withdrew a faded photograph of a striking young Chinese woman standing proudly before a building that looked remarkably like the Regal Hotel. Tiana whispered. Not yet the Regal, the older woman corrected, but the land upon which it would be built. Land that belonged, in part, to my grandmother. Land that was taken by American developers through forgery, threats, and exploitation of anti-Chinese sentiment during a time when my people were not protected by your laws. She closed the folio with a decisive snap. I have spent 20 years tracing the paper trail, and now I have come to reclaim what was stolen, not just property, but history. My history. Our history. Her eyes met Tiana's, calculating but not unkind. The question is, will you help me? Because what I plan to do will certainly cost your Mr. Eaton his position and possibly much more. Tiana thought of the whispers in the break room, the casual racism, the assumptions. She thought of her own stalled dreams and the barriers she'd faced. And she thought of this proud woman, fighting to reclaim a legacy erased by prejudice and greed. Tell me what you need, she said simply. Lu smiled, relief and determination mingling in her expression. First, we need to find what's hidden in this hotel. I believe there are secrets concealed within these very walls, secrets that will prove my claim once and for all. 3 days into Madame Lu's stay at the Regal Hotel, Tiana found herself leading a completely different life than the one she'd grown accustomed to as a housekeeper. Instead of pushing cleaning carts and changing linens, she now wore a hotel-provided pantsuit and served as Lu's personal translator and assistant. The hotel records should be stored somewhere on the premises, Lu said as they shared tea in her suite one evening. The room had transformed into something of a command center, with maps and documents spread across every surface. Most establishments of this caliber maintain archives of their history, blueprints, renovation records, ownership documents. Tiana nodded thoughtfully. There's a records room in the basement. I've passed it during inventory shifts, but I've never been inside. It's usually locked. We need access to those records, Lu said, her fingers absently touching the phoenix pendant at her throat. I believe this hotel holds more than just symbolic significance to my family's legacy. I think something tangible remains hidden here, something that could prove my grandmother's claim once and for all. What exactly are we looking for? Tiana asked that Lu's eyes took on a distant quality. My grandmother spoke of a special room, a suite she designed herself when she was part owner of the property. After she was forced to flee, the new owners renovated extensively, but she always believed they simply concealed her creation rather than destroying it. Too much valuable craftsmanship to demolish, she said. A hidden room in the hotel. Tiana couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. That seems unlikely, yes, Lu acknowledged with a small smile. But old buildings hold many secrets, especially when those secrets were deliberately buried. She gestured to the antique trunks in the corner. Those aren't just filled with heirlooms. They contain pieces of a puzzle I've spent decades assembling. Lu's determination was infectious, and Tiana found herself nodding. I'll find a way to access the records room, but we'll need to be careful. Mr. Eaton already watches me like a hawk. That night, long after most guests had retired and the cleaning staff had finished their evening rounds, Tiana and Lu made their way to the service elevator. Tiana had changed back into her housekeeping uniform, the perfect disguise for moving around the hotel unnoticed during off hours. The night security is minimal, Tiana explained as they descended to the basement level. Just one guard who mostly stays at the front desk and 2 who patrol the upper floors where the presidential suites are located. The basement corridor was dimly lit and smelled of laundry detergent and old paper. They passed the laundry facilities and maintenance rooms before reaching a heavy wooden door with a brass plate that read Archives. It's locked, Tiana confirmed, trying the handle. But I think I know where we can find the key. They backtracked to the maintenance supervisor's office. Using her staff keycard, Tiana accessed the small room and located a key cabinet on the wall. These aren't labeled properly, but I've seen Anderson use a brass key for the archives. After trying 3 different keys, the lock finally turned. The archives room was larger than Tiana had expected. Rows of metal shelving units filled with boxes, plus several flat filing cabinets likely containing blueprints and larger documents. We should work quickly, Lou said, surveying the room. Where would they keep the original building plans? They split up, each taking a section of the room. Tiana methodically searched through filing cabinets while Lou examined labeled boxes on the shelves. The minutes ticked by in tense silence, broken only by the occasional rustling of papers. Tiana, look at this, Lou called softly after nearly an hour of searching. She held an aged leather-bound book, its cover worn at the corners. I found it behind a loose panel in the wall, not even on the shelves. Tiana joined her, taking the book carefully. Inside were handwritten notes in faded ink, some in English, some in Mandarin. Interspersed throughout were sketches of architectural details, maps with notations, and what appeared to be property deeds. This is my grandmother's handwriting, Lou whispered, her finger tracing the Chinese characters reverently. This is her journal from when she lived in New York. They carefully wrapped the journal in Tiana's scarf and left the archives, locking the door behind them. Neither noticed the security camera in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. The next morning, Tiana was summoned to Mr. Eaton's office. Heather, her former housekeeping colleague, stood by his desk with a smug expression. Jackson, Mr. Eaton began, his tone clipped. It's been brought to my attention that you accessed restricted areas of the hotel last night. Tiana kept her expression neutral. Sir, don't play dumb, Heather interjected. I saw you on the security footage when I was bringing reports to Kevin in security. You and that Chinese lady were sneaking around in the basement. Mr. Eaton raised a hand to silence Heather. Is this true, Jackson? Were you in the archives room after hours? Tiana thought quickly. Madame Lou requested a tour of the hotel, including its historical aspects. As her assigned liaison, I was accommodating her interest in the Regal's architecture and history. At midnight, Mr. Eaton's eyebrows rose skeptically. Madame Lou has been experiencing jet lag, sir. She's most active during late hours. Mr. Eaton drummed his fingers on the desk. Jackson, your assignment is to assist our guest with translation and basic needs, not to provide unauthorized tours of restricted areas. This is your only warning. One more incident like this, and you'll return to housekeeping, or worse. Understood, sir. As she turned to leave, Heather bumped her shoulder roughly. Watch yourself, Tiana. Some of us have worked here for years without special treatment. You're not better than us just because you speak Chinese. Tiana met her gaze evenly. I never said I was, Heather. That evening, Lou pored over her grandmother's journal in the privacy of her suite, translating passages for Tiana. Listen to this, she said excitedly. The Phoenix Wing remains our secret. James insists we seal it during renovations rather than destroy it. The Americans would never appreciate its true value. But perhaps someday our descendants will rediscover what we've hidden. The Phoenix Wing, Tiana asked. It must be the name of the suite my grandmother designed, Lou explained. And this James person, he must have been her business partner before the betrayal. Lou flipped through more pages, stopping at a hand-drawn map of the hotel's third floor. Look here, this section is marked differently. It's where the Orchid and Magnolia suites are now, but the layout is completely different. Tiana studied the drawing. That wall shouldn't be there according to the current layout. And what's this symbol? Lou's finger traced a small phoenix emblem drawn in the corner of the mysterious space. The same as my pendant. This has to be it. She closed the journal decisively. We need to examine that section of the hotel tonight. Mr. Eaton warned me about accessing restricted areas, Tiana said hesitantly. If I'm caught again, then we won't be caught, Lou replied with determination. I'll handle the security cameras. True to her word, Lou approached Greg Anderson, the night security guard, with an envelope of cash. Her request was simple. Disable the third-floor cameras for 1 hour during his shift. The amount she offered more than his monthly salary made refusal nearly impossible. Just routine maintenance, you understand, Lou explained through Tiana's translation. Some personal items I need to retrieve without documentation. Greg pocketed the envelope with practiced casualness. System goes down for updates sometimes. Nothing I can do about that. At 2 a.m., Tiana and Lou slipped out of the Magnolia suite and into the adjacent corridor. According to the journal, the sealed wing should be accessible through what was now a decorative alcove housing a large Chinese vase. one of the few Asian design elements in the otherwise Western-styled hotel. The proportions are wrong, Lu murmured, examining the alcove. This wall is too shallow compared to the dimensions in the journal. Tiana ran her hands along the wood paneling, feeling for any irregularities. There could be a space behind it. They methodically examined every inch of the alcove, pressing, prodding, and tapping the walls. Finally, Lu noticed something about the vase itself. A small phoenix emblem nearly identical to her pendant was worked into the porcelain design. "This is it," she whispered. When she pressed the emblem, they heard a faint click. Together, they pushed against the back panel of the alcove, which swung inward on silent hinges to reveal a dark passage. Tiana switched on the flashlight sheet, brought, illuminating a short corridor that ended at another door. This one was locked, but the key was in Lu's pendant. The phoenix fit perfectly into a matching impression on the door, and with a twist, the mechanism released. The room beyond took their breath away. Though covered in decades of dust, the hidden suite was a masterpiece of 1940s luxury fused with traditional Chinese design elements. Silk wall coverings, now faded but still beautiful, depicted scenes of mountains and rivers. Carved wooden screens separated the spaces, and porcelain vases stood in niches along the walls. Most striking were the family portraits, formal photographs, of elegant Chinese men and women in both Western and traditional attire. "My family," Lu whispered, approaching one large portrait that hung over a fireplace. "My grandmother as a young woman." The resemblance was unmistakable. The same proud bearing, the same intelligent eyes. In the photo, she stood beside a handsome Chinese man in a perfectly tailored suit, both of them radiating confidence and prosperity. "Zhang Meilin," Lu said, touching the image reverently. She was only 25 when this was taken. Already a successful businesswoman in a time and place where Chinese women were expected to be invisible. As Lu told the story, Tiana could almost see it unfolding. Meilin Zhang arriving in New York in 1938, fleeing the Japanese invasion of China with family wealth converted to diamonds sewn into the lining of her coats. Establishing herself as an art dealer catering to wealthy New Yorkers' growing fascination with Oriental aesthetics. Gradually investing in real estate, including the property that would eventually become the Regal Hotel. Then came Pearl Harbor, Lu continued grimly. Suddenly, all Asians were viewed with suspicion. Chinese, Japanese. Many Americans couldn't or wouldn't distinguish between them. My grandmother's American partners saw an opportunity. They forged documents, threatened deportation, exploited anti-Asian sentiment to push her out of her own business. "That's terrible," Tiana said softly. She fled back to Hong Kong in 1951, taking only what she could carry. She thought she'd lost everything. Lu's fingers went to her pendant. This was part of a matched pair, phoenix and dragon, symbols of balance and prosperity in our culture. The dragon pendant was lost when she fled. Tiana moved deeper into the suite, examining the preserved furnishings. Near a writing desk, she noticed something odd, a portrait hanging slightly askew. Behind it was a small wall safe. "Do you think?" she began. Lu was already examining the safe. The combination would be something meaningful to her. She tried several sequences before the handle turned. Inside was a single envelope, yellowed with age, addressed in elegant handwriting to Mrs. Meilin Zhang at an address in Hong Kong. "It's postmarked 1951, Tiana observed. "It was never delivered." Lu's hands trembled as she carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in English and a smaller envelope containing something solid. Her face paled as she read the letter. "It's from James Thompson, my grandmother's business partner. He writes that he regrets his actions, that he was pressured by the others to betray her. He enclosed this as a small reparation." She tipped the smaller envelope, and out slid the missing dragon pendant, the mate to the phoenix she wore. "He tried to make amends," Tiana said. "Too little, too late," Lu replied, though her voice held more sadness than bitterness. And the letter never reached her. She died believing everyone had betrayed her. As they prepared to leave the hidden suite, Lu paused at the threshold, looking back at this preserved moment of history, her family's history. "We need evidence of everything," she said firmly. "Photographs, documents, anything that proves my grandmother's ownership. Because now I know for certain. This hotel rightfully belongs, in part, to me. The discovery of the hidden suite changed everything. While Lu had arrived at the Regal with suspicions and fragments of evidence, she now possessed concrete proof of her grandmother's connection to the property. The following morning, she moved with new purpose, instructing Tiana to arrange for a private art and antiques appraiser to visit the hotel. The items in that suite aren't just family heirlooms, Lu explained. They're valuable historical artifacts that establish my grandmother's presence and investment in this building. Word of Lu's special treatment had spread throughout the hotel. Staff members whispered as Tiana passed, some envious, others openly hostile. During her brief visits to the employee areas to collect her belongings, she overheard snippets of conversation. She thinks she's management now. Who does she think she is? Bet she won't even look at us when this is over. Tiana kept her head high and ignored the comments, but the strain of straddling two worlds was taking its toll. She was neither fully staff nor management, caught in a precarious position between loyalty to her employer and commitment to Lu's quest for justice. The appraiser arrived that afternoon, a distinguished older gentleman named Dr. Wallace from Sotheby's, who examined the items Lu had carefully removed from the hidden suite. Exquisite craftsmanship, he murmured, examining a small jade carving. Ming Dynasty, without question. And this porcelain, Qing Dynasty, Kangxi period. Madam, these pieces alone are worth several $1,000,000. And they establish provenance. Lu pressed. They confirm these items have been here since the 1940s? Without question. The dust patterns, the positioning, these haven't been moved in decades. And this, he indicated a scroll painting. This has your family seal. It's unquestionably authentic. Mr. Eaton, who had insisted on being present during the appraisal, watched with growing interest as the values climbed higher. When the final estimate exceeded $10 million for just the portable items, something shifted in his demeanor. Madam Lu, he said as the appraiser packed his equipment, I had no idea you were interested in the historical aspects of our hotel. The Regal has a rich legacy of cultural appreciation. Perhaps we might discuss potential collaboration? The hotel's parent company has several investment opportunities that might interest someone with your obvious appreciation for history and value. Lu smiled politely. Perhaps, though my interests are quite specific to this property. After Eaton left, Lu's smile vanished. Vultures circling, she muttered in Mandarin. He smells money and suddenly wants to be my friend. The next morning brought new complications. Two guests checked into the suite across from Lu's. A man and woman who introduced themselves as Michael and Jennifer Lee, travel journalists working on a feature about luxury hotels in Manhattan. Something's not right about them, Tiana observed, after encountering the couple in the elevator. They asked too many questions about you. Lu's expression darkened when Tiana described them. I need to see them without being noticed. From behind a newspaper in the lobby, Lu observed the newcomers. As they chatted with the concierge, her body tensed, and she abruptly retreated to the elevator. I know them, she said when they were safely back in her suite. Not personally, but I know who they are. The man, his grandfather was Warren Phillips, one of the men who forced my grandmother out. His family still owns shares in the development company that controls this hotel. They're not really journalists, Tiana concluded. No, they're here because someone has realized what I'm doing. Someone is watching. Lu grew increasingly paranoid over the next day, refusing to leave her suite and questioning every interaction. She began keeping the dragon pendant with her at all times, but suddenly stopped wearing the phoenix pendant, removing it from her neck and hiding it among her belongings. Don't you trust me anymore? Tiana asked, hurt by the subtle withdrawal. It's not about trust, Lu replied, her voice strained. It's about risk. The fewer people who know where these items are, the better. The tension between them grew, a subtle wall forming where there had been easy collaboration. Tiana tried not to take it personally. Lu was under tremendous stress, but the distance stung nonetheless. While delivering fresh towels to a suite down the hall, Tiana spotted Heather emerging from Lu's room, quickly tucking something into her uniform pocket. The door closed softly behind her. Heather, Tiana called, startling the other woman. What were you doing in Madame Lu's suite? Heather's smile was too bright, too forced. Just turn down service. Ms. Perfect Translator doesn't handle the actual cleaning, does she? Lou specifically requested no housekeeping services except through me. Well, Mr. Eaton assigned me. Heather shot back defensively. Take it up with him if you have a problem. As Heather brushed past, Tiana caught her arm. What did you take from the room? Nothing. Let go of me. Empty your pockets. Then. There. Brief struggle ended when Heather shoved Tiana back and hurried toward the service elevator. Tiana immediately went to Lou's suite, finding the door unlocked. A security breach Lou would never permit. Inside, nothing seemed obviously disturbed, but Tiana knew Lou's meticulously organized system for her documents. A quick check confirmed her fears. A translated note regarding the hidden suite was missing from its folder. Tiana found Heather in the laundry room 20 minutes later. Without preamble, she confronted her. You took a document from Madame Lou's room. Who put you up to it? Heather's defiance crumbled quickly under Tiana's unwavering stare. It wasn't my idea. That journalist, Mr. Lee, he offered me $500 to look for papers with Chinese writing. Said it was for a cultural feature. She couldn't meet Tiana's eyes. I needed the money. My mom's medical bills. You gave private documents to a stranger. Documents that don't belong to you. It was just one page. And they're journalists. What's the harm? Tiana's voice hardened. They're not journalists, Heather. They're people trying to undermine Madame Lou's legal claim to property they stole. From her family. Heather paled. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. When Tiana brought Heather to Lou's suite to confess, she expected anger, possibly even legal threats. Instead, Lou listened calmly to Heather's tearful explanation, then nodded thoughtfully. You made a mistake based on false information and financial need, Lou said. That is something I can understand. She opened her purse and removed several $100 bills. This is for your mother's medical expenses. No strings attached. Heather stared at the money in shock. But I stole from you. And now you have a chance to make a different choice. Lou's expression was firm, but not unkind. Everyone deserves an opportunity to choose justice when they understand what's at stake. After Heather left, still stunned by Lou's forgiveness, Tiana asked, Why did you do that? She betrayed your trust. She was exploited by people who understand her vulnerabilities, Lou replied. Just as my grandmother was. Breaking the cycle of exploitation is part of why I'm here. She moved to the window, looking down at the street below. Besides, I want her on our side for what comes next. Which is war, Lou said simply. Those people, the Lees, aren't just here to spy. They're here to stop me by any means necessary. She turned to face Tiana, her expression grave. I need to tell you everything now. My real name isn't Lou. It's Meiling Zhou. My grandmother wasn't just a partial owner of this building. She was the original owner of the land it stands on. The Regal Hotel was built on property stolen from my family through fraud, intimidation, and exploitation of anti-Chinese sentiment after World War II. That's what you've been trying to prove. All along, Tiana said. Yes, but there's more. The people who stole it, the Phillips, Eaton, and Westbrook families, they didn't just take our property. They erased our existence from the records. They destroyed documents, altered deeds, and created shell companies. To hide their actions, 3 generations of my family tried to reclaim what was ours, only to be blocked at every turn. Meiling's voice hardened. Until now? Now we have physical evidence. We have the hidden suite. We have the letter from James Thompson admitting to the conspiracy. We have enough to expose them all, if we can get the evidence to the right people, before they silence us. As if on cue, there was a sharp knock at the door. Tiana opened it to find a hotel security officer. Sorry to disturb you, ma'am, but there's been an incident. Someone broke into your suite while you were at dinner. The security footage had been conveniently deleted during the time frame of the break-in. When they returned to the suite, the destruction was comprehensive. Furniture overturned, Lou's antique trunks emptied onto the floor, clothing and documents scattered everywhere. Most alarming, the precious letters from James Thompson were gone, along with several other key documents. They're trying to erase the evidence, Meiling said, surveying the damage with eerie calm. Just like they erased my grandmother. Tiana placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Not all of it. We still have the hidden suite. We still have the appraisal documentation. And most importantly, we still have the truth. Meiling nodded, her resolve visibly strengthening. Yes, and now they've shown their hand. They're frightened, as they should be. As they began cleaning up the mess, Tiana spotted something glinting. Beneath an overturned chair, the phoenix pendant, miraculously overlooked by the intruders. She picked it up, offering it to Milling with a smile. See, they can't erase everything. Some things are meant to survive. Morning light filtered through. The curtains of Milling Zhou's ransacked suite, illuminating the destruction in harsh detail. What had seemed merely chaotic in the dim evening light now revealed itself as methodical and thorough. Every drawer had been emptied, every document container opened. The intruders had known exactly what they were looking for. They took all. The original letters, Milling said, carefully picking up a torn photograph of her grandmother, including my mother's correspondence and the admission letter from James Thompson. Tiana surveyed the damage, cataloging items with her phone camera. We need to file a proper police report. This isn't just a simple break-in. The police won't help us, Milling replied with quiet certainty. Not against the people who own this hotel. You don't know that. I do. Milling's voice held decades of bitter experience. My family has tried legal channels for 3 generations. Documents mysteriously disappear from court files. Judges suddenly recuse themselves. Police reports get misplaced. The system was designed to protect people like the Eatons and Phillips, not people like my grandmother. Before Tiana could argue further, her phone buzzed with a text from the front desk. Mr. Eaton wants to see us immediately about the break-in. Milling's laugh was hollow. Of course he does. He wants to assess how much evidence we still have. In his wood-paneled office, Mr. Eaton expressed rehearsed concern while his eyes remained calculating and cold. This is unprecedented in the Regal's history, he said, shaking his head. I assure you, we're taking this security breach extremely seriously. Are you? Milling asked, her voice deceptively soft. Then perhaps you can explain why the security footage from that time period was conveniently deleted. Eaton's smile tightened. A regrettable technical malfunction. Our IT team is investigating. And your night guard? Tiana added. The one who helped us earlier, he's suddenly gone? Jackson, this conversation doesn't concern you. Eaton snapped before smoothing his features again. Kevin Peterson resigned yesterday for personal reasons. Now, madam. Joe, is it? Not Lou. Milling inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the slip of her real name. I understand some documents were taken, Eaton continued. Perhaps if you could describe them, we could help identify potential motives? Family correspondence, Milling replied vaguely. Sentimental items, primarily. I see. Eaton leaned back, steepling his fingers. Well, these things happen sometimes. Misunderstandings between guests. Perhaps someone mistook your room for theirs in an intoxicated state. My door was locked with a key card, Milling pointed out. And nothing of obvious monetary value was taken, only specific papers. Eaton spread his hands. We'll continue investigating, of course. In the meantime, we'd be happy to move you to our presidential suite at no additional charge. That won't be necessary. I prefer to stay where I am. As you wish. Eaton's smile didn't reach his eyes. Please let us know if there's anything else we can do to make your stay more secure. As they left Eaton's office, Tiana felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. He knows who you are, and he knows why you're here. Of course he does, Milling replied. The break-in wasn't meant to stop me. It was meant to intimidate me. To show that they can reach me anywhere in this hotel, take anything they want. We should leave, Tiana said urgently. Get a room somewhere else, somewhere safe. And abandon the hidden suite? The physical evidence that proves my claim? Milling shook her head firmly. That's exactly what they want. Back in the suite, they began the painstaking process of cleaning up, documenting what remained, and taking inventory of what was missing. Tiana insisted on photographing everything. The damage, the remaining documents, the empty spaces where crucial evidence had been. I don't understand why they didn't destroy the hidden suite itself, Tiana said as they worked. If they know about it, why leave it intact? Because it's part of the building structure, Milling explained. Destroying it would require construction permits, contractors, questions they don't want to answer. But they can claim papers were stolen by ordinary thieves. A knock at the door interrupted them. Tiana opened it cautiously to find the night guard, Kevin Peterson, standing there looking nervous. I shouldn't be here, he said in a low voice, glancing over his shoulder. But I couldn't just disappear without warning you. Tiana ushered him in quickly. The young man was pale, with dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept. They fired me yesterday, he explained. Said I'd violated security protocols. But before I left, I overheard Eaton on the phone with someone, talking about containing the Zhou situation and removing problematic elements. He was talking about us, Miling said calmly. Kevin nodded. I think so. Look, I need this job, but not bad enough to be part of whatever they're doing. Something's not right here. Did you see who broke into the suite? Tiana asked. No, but I saw those journalist people, the Lees, talking to Eaton in his office after hours yesterday. They seemed familiar with each other, not like guests with the manager. After Kevin left, declining Miling's offer of money but accepting her thanks, Tiana turned to her employer with fresh determination. We need to know exactly what we're up against. Tell me everything, the complete story. Seated by the window overlooking Central Park, Miling began the tale that had defined 3 generations of her family. My grandmother, Zhang Meilin, came to America in 1938, fleeing the Japanese invasion of China. She was from a wealthy Shanghai family with international business connections, which allowed her to transfer significant assets to New York before Shanghai fell. While many Chinese immigrants struggled in poverty, my grandmother had the advantage of wealth, education, and powerful connections. Miling showed Tiana photographs, her grandmother in elegant Western clothing, attending gallery openings and society events in pre-war New York. She began as an art dealer, specializing in Asian antiquities for wealthy American collectors. By 1940, she had expanded into real estate, purchasing a block of properties in Manhattan, including this land where the Regal now stands. She had a vision of a luxury hotel that would blend Eastern and Western aesthetics, revolutionary for that time. The story took a darker turn after Pearl Harbor in December 1941. Though China was an American ally against Japan, anti-Asian sentiment flourished. Chinese Americans wore buttons declaring, "I'm Chinese, not Japanese," to avoid harassment. But the distinction was often lost on a public gripped by wartime paranoia. My grandmother had 3 American business partners, James Thompson, Warren Phillips, and George Eaton. Yes, our Mr. Eaton's grandfather. After Pearl Harbor, they began pressuring her to sell her holdings at a fraction of their value, claiming it was for her own protection. When she refused, the partners employed more sinister tactics: anonymous threats, vandalism of her properties, whispers to potential clients that she had suspicious loyalties. Meanwhile, they began systematically altering business records, forging her signature on transfer documents, creating shell companies to obscure ownership. By 1951, the pressure became unbearable. Her bank accounts were frozen for investigation. Her phone was tapped. She was followed on the street. Fearing for her life, she fled to Hong Kong, believing she had lost everything. Miling's voice grew softer. She never returned to America. She died in 1975, still telling my mother about the beautiful hotel that should have been her legacy. She was convinced that Thompson, Phillips, and Eaton had conspired to steal everything she had built. And they did. Tiana whispered, the pieces finally coming together. Yes, the Regal Hotel opened in 1952, built on my grandmother's land, incorporating elements of her design, but with her name erased from every record. The official history claims it was conceived and built entirely by Thompson, Phillips, and Eaton Enterprises. What about James Thompson's letter? The one that was stolen? He admitted to the conspiracy? Miling nodded. Written in 1951, apparently, after my grandmother had already fled. A confession and apology that she never received. It mentioned pressure from Phillips and Eaton and included the dragon pendant as a token of remorse. And now his descendants, or Phillips' descendants, are here to make sure that evidence never comes to light, Tiana concluded. Exactly. The current owners have too much to lose if the truth emerges. Not just this hotel, but potentially dozens of properties acquired through similar methods during that era of discrimination. Tiana considered this information, her mind racing through possibilities. We need to find supporting evidence from outside sources. If they've taken your family documents, we need to find copies elsewhere. That afternoon, while Miling rested, Tiana visited the New York Public Library, searching through microfiche records of newspapers from the 1940s and early 1950s. Hours of searching yielded small, but significant discoveries. Society page mentions of Chinese art dealer Miss Zhang attending various events with Thompson, Phillips, and Eaton. A small article about Oriental influences in modern architecture that briefly mentioned Zhang's vision for a new hotel development. More ominously, she found a pattern of suspicious incidents affecting Chinese-owned businesses. In Manhattan from 1942 to 1951, a warehouse fire that destroyed the inventory of an import company. A prominent Chinese restaurant owner deported on questionable charges. Several businesses sold under market value after months of declining customers and anonymous threats. None of these incidents were directly connected to Meiling's grandmother in the news reports, but together they painted a picture of systematic targeting of successful Chinese business owners during and after the war. Meanwhile, Meiling had convinced the hotel's appraiser to return for further documentation. Dr. Wallace arrived carrying professional camera equipment to properly photograph and catalog the items in the hidden suite. "These pieces are museum quality," he remarked, carefully examining a jade carving. "And you say they've been here, untouched, since 1951. "Yes," Meiling confirmed. "My grandmother left them behind when she was forced to flee." Dr. Wallace's expression grew serious. "Ms. Zhou, I've worked with Chinese antiquities for 30 years. The provenance issues you've described, they're not uncommon from that period. Many collections with questionable acquisition histories have come to light in recent decades. Would you be willing to provide expert testimony about these items?" "If necessary," Meiling asked directly. The appraiser hesitated only briefly. "Professional ethics would require it, yes." After he left, Meiling seemed encouraged. "He believes us, and he has credibility in the art world." Their small victory was short-lived. That evening, as they returned from dinner, Dr. Wallace called Meiling in a panic. "Someone followed me from the hotel," he said, his voice shaking. "A black SUV tailed me all the way home. Then I received a call warning me to forget what I saw today if I wanted to keep my reputation intact." "Are you all right?" Meiling asked, genuinely concerned. "Yes, just rattled. But Ms. Zhou, these people are serious. Whatever you're involved in, be careful." The next morning, Tiana found something unexpected in the hotel's tea room, a flash drive tucked beneath the table where Meiling often sat. There was no note, no explanation for its presence, but the location seemed too specific to be coincidental. Back in the suite, they plugged the drive into Tiana's laptop. It contained a treasure trove of digital files, scanned property deeds from the 1940s showing Zhang Meilin's name, audio recordings of what appeared to be business meetings, and most significantly, a notarized statement from James Thompson dated 1970, providing detailed accounts of the methods used to appropriate Zhang's properties. Who left this? Tiana wondered, scrolling through the files in amazement. "Someone with access to Thompson family records," Meiling said. "Someone with a conscience." The final file was a simple text document containing a single line. "Contact Amanda Chun at the Chinatown Historical Society." Amanda Chun was a meticulous woman in her 60s who listened to their story without interruption, occasionally nodding, as if confirming details she already knew. "Your grandmother's case isn't unique," she said when Meiling finished. "We've documented dozens of similar stories. Chinese business owners who lost everything during that period of heightened discrimination. Most never received justice. But you have records?" Tiana pressed. "Some. Property records, business listings, immigration files. Enough to establish that Zhang Meilin was a significant property owner before mysteriously divesting everything." In 1951, she peered at Meiling over her glasses. "We've tried to build cases before, but without direct evidence of fraud. We have that evidence now," Meiling said, pulling out her laptop. "And we need your help to preserve it before it disappears." 2. They spent hours copying files, cross-referencing records, and building a comprehensive timeline. By evening, they had assembled a compelling dossier documenting the systematic theft of Zhang Meilin's property through fraud, coercion, and exploitation of anti-Chinese prejudice. "This is enough to interest the press," Amanda confirmed. "I have contacts at several publications who focus on historical injustice and real estate fraud. With your permission?" Meiling nodded decisively. "It's time for the truth to come out. All of it." Tiana woke to pounding on her door at 6 a.m. Half asleep, She opened it to find two hotel security officers standing in the hallway. "Miss Jackson, we need to speak with you immediately about a security breach." Something in their stance, too rigid, too rehearsed, set off warning bells. "Let me get dressed. I'll meet you downstairs." "Now, miss." Mr. Eaton's orders. Tiana closed the door firmly. "5 minutes. I'll meet you in the lobby." Instead of dressing, she immediately called Milling, who answered on the first ring, already awake. "They're at my door too," she said. "Don't let them in. Something's happening." Looking through the peephole, Tiana saw the security officers conferring with someone on a radio. One of them pulled out a key card. They were going to enter forcibly. Tiana grabbed her phone, purse, and room key, then slipped out through the bathroom's connecting door to an adjacent housekeeping closet, a shortcut she knew from her days on the cleaning staff. Within minutes, she had navigated the service corridors. To Miling's floor, Milling was waiting, fully dressed, a small bag packed. "They're trying to isolate us," she said without preamble. "I received a call from Amanda Chen 10 minutes ago. The journalist she contacted wants to meet today. They're moving to stop us." Together, they used Miling's key to access the hidden suite, which had become their sanctuary within the increasingly hostile hotel. Once inside, Milling retrieved the jade pendants and several key documents she had concealed there after the break-in. "We need to get out of the hotel," Tiana said, peering through a crack in the hidden door. "They're searching the floors systematically." "Not without copying the evidence first," Milling insisted. "Everything in this room proves my claim. If we leave, they'll destroy it all." Using Tiana's phone, they photographed everything: the furniture, art, architectural details, and especially the family photographs that established Zhang Meilin's presence in the space. Milling dictated a detailed statement, which Tiana recorded, explaining the significance of each item and its connection to her grandmother. "Send it all to Amanda Chun," Milling instructed. "And to yourself. Multiple copies in different locations." Once the evidence was secured digitally, they faced the challenge of physically leaving the hotel. Security staff now patrolled every floor, and the Lees had stationed themselves near the main elevators, pretending to read newspapers while watching every passing guest. "The loading dock," Tiana suggested. "Delivery trucks arrive starting at 7 a.m. We can blend in with the morning deliveries." They navigated the service corridors, avoiding staff when possible, nodding casually when not. Tiana's housekeeping uniform, which she had kept, provided some cover. Hotel staff were often invisible to guests and management alike. For Milling, they borrowed a catering jacket from a storage closet, tucking her elegant hair under a plain C and the loading dock. They slipped past distracted receiving clerks and out onto the street, where the morning rush provided welcome anonymity. Only when they were several blocks away did they pause to breathe. "My room key is deactivated," Tiana realized, trying to access her banking app. "And my employee ID. They've locked me out of everything." "They're erasing you," Milling said grimly. "Just like they erased my grandmother." They took a taxi to the 20th Precinct Police Station, where Tiana insisted on filing a report about the break-in, the stolen documents, and the threatening behavior of hotel security. The desk sergeant listened politely but appeared skeptical. "Sounds like an internal hotel matter to me," he said, reluctantly taking notes. "Especially if you're an employee. Have you spoken to your HR department? The hotel management is involved in the harassment," Tiana explained, frustration mounting. "They're trying to suppress evidence of historical fraud." The sergeant's expression made it clear he considered this beyond his pay grade. "We'll look into it. But honestly, if nothing was physically stolen from you personally and no one threatened you with actual violence," they left with a case number but little confidence that any action would be taken. Outside the station, Milling checked her phone, which showed multiple missed calls from unknown numbers. "They're trying to track us," she said, powering off the device. "We need to go somewhere safe until we can meet with the journalist." Tiana hesitated only briefly before making a decision. "My mother's apartment in Harlem. She's visiting my brother in Chicago this week. We'll be safe there." From the relative security of the small but comfortable apartment, they made contact with Dr. Wallace, who had recovered from his initial fear and was now indignant about the intimidation tactics. "I've been an appraiser for 30 years, he said over the phone. "My professional reputation is beyond reproach. Their threats have only convinced me further that something unethical is happening at the Regal. He agreed to document his appraisal findings officially and forward them to Amanda Chun at the Historical Society. One small victory. Later that afternoon, they received an unexpected call from Heather, Tiana's former housekeeping colleague. Tiana, are you okay? The hotel's going crazy looking for you. Eaton fired me this morning, said I was compromised because I talked to you. He's fired 3 other people too, including Kevin from security. I'm safe, Tiana assured her. But what's happening there? It's weird. Eaton called an emergency. Board meeting. Men in expensive suits have been arriving all morning. And those journalist people are working directly with security now, not even pretending to be guests anymore. After thanking Heather for the information, Tiana turned to Miling. They're panicking. They know we have evidence. Then it's time to use it, Miling said decisively. Amanda Chin had arranged for them to meet with Sarah Winters, an investigative reporter for the New York Tribune known for exposing corporate malfeasance. In a quiet cafe in Chinatown, they shared their evidence and explained the full story. This is incredible, Sarah said, reviewing the photos and documents. Historical theft, corporate fraud, ongoing cover-up, spanning over 70 years. She looked up at Miling. You understand that publishing this will create powerful enemies? The Eaton and Phillips families are major players in New York real estate. I've been their enemy since birth, Miling replied calmly. The difference now is that I'm ready to fight in the open. What do you want as an outcome? Sarah asked. Financial compensation? Public apology? Justice? Miling said simply. Recognition of what was stolen. Restoration of my grandmother's name and legacy. And yes, legal ownership of what rightfully belongs to my family. Sarah nodded, scribbling notes. I'll need a few days to verify independently and speak to legal before we publish. But this is solid. I think you finally got them cornered. The story broke 3 days later. Hotel empire built on stolen Chinese land. The detailed exposé included historical documents, expert testimony from Dr. Wallace, statements from former employees, and a scathing indictment of the systematic exploitation of Chinese business owners in post-war New York. The response was immediate and dramatic. Social media erupted with outrage. Asian American community organizations announced protests. Several prominent guests publicly canceled their reservations at the Regal. Legal experts on morning shows discussed potential reparations and the statute of limitations for historical fraud cases. By afternoon, a small but growing crowd of protesters had gathered outside the Regal, carrying signs demanding justice for Zhang Meilin and stop erasing Asian American history. Inside the hotel, chaos reigned. Mr. Eaton, face flushed with fury, called an all-staff meeting where he announced immediate terminations for disloyal elements, including Heather and several others suspected of sympathizing with Tiana and Miling. This is a fabricated controversy being pushed by activists and unscrupulous journalists, he insisted to increasingly skeptical staff. Anyone providing information to the media or these protesters will be terminated immediately and potentially face legal action. But the tide had already turned. 2 housekeepers walked out during his speech. The concierge quietly removed his name tag and left without a word. By evening, the hotel was operating with skeleton staff as more employees chose sides. Meanwhile, legal proceedings moved with surprising speed. A judge, responding to an emergency petition filed by Miling's hastily assembled legal team, issued a temporary freeze on the hotel's assets pending investigation of ownership claims. The documentary evidence presented raises significant questions about the legitimacy of the current ownership structure, the judge's statement read. Given the serious nature of these allegations, temporary measures are warranted to preserve the status quo until a full hearing can be conducted. For the board of directors of Regal Holdings LLC, this was the final straw. An emergency meeting was called, and according to sources inside, heated arguments broke out between factions. Some demanded aggressive legal counterattacks. Others, seeing the mounting public relations disaster, advocated for settlement negotiations. 1 week after fleeing the hotel, Tiana stood beside Miling on the sidewalk outside the Regal, watching the continuing protests. They had maintained a low profile during the media storm, letting Sarah Winters and the legal team handle public statements. Do you think they'll actually negotiate? Tiana asked, observing the grim-faced security guards watching protesters from behind the hotel's glass doors. They don't have a choice now, Milling replied. The evidence is too public, too compelling. Their only option is to control how much they lose. As if on cue, Milling's phone rang, her attorney with news. After a brief conversation, she turned to Tiana with a smile of vindication. The board wants to meet. Without Eaton present, she squeezed Tiana's hand. They're ready to talk terms. It's really happening, Tiana marveled. Your grandmother's finally getting justice. Milling nodded, her eyes on the elegant facade of the Regal Hotel, a building that represented both theft and heritage, destruction and preservation. Not just justice, she said quietly. Restoration. As if summoned by her words, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The door opened, and Milling straightened her shoulders, ready for the final confrontation. She stepped toward the vehicle, then paused to look back at Tiana. Are you coming? We started this together. We should finish it together. Without hesitation, Tiana moved to her side, and together they approached the waiting car, ready to reclaim a stolen legacy. The black car glided to a stop at the Regal Hotel's main entrance, where protesters parted to create a path. Camera phones rose in unison as Milling Zhou stepped out, resplendent in a crisp white suit that made her look more like a conquering general than a wronged heiress. Tiana followed, her simple navy dress a deliberate contrast to her employer's statement attire. Are you nervous? Tiana whispered as they approached the revolving doors. No, Milling replied with quiet confidence. My grandmother waited 70 years for this moment. I've waited my entire life. The protesters fell silent as Milling paused. At the entrance, her gaze sweeping over the gleaming brass fixtures and marble floors that her grandmother had helped design but never saw completed. Then, with a slight straightening of her shoulders, she pushed through the revolving door and entered the lobby of the Regal Hotel, not as a guest, but as a claimant. The contrast with her first arrival couldn't have been more dramatic. Where once she had stood ignored and misunderstood, now every eye in the luxurious space followed her progress across the polished floor. Staff members froze mid-task. Guests whispered behind raised hands. Security guards touched their earpieces, nervously awaiting instructions that didn't come. Milling walked directly to the front desk, where Rebecca stood wide-eyed, clutching a stack of registration cards. Please inform Mr. Eaton that Milling Zhou is here for the board meeting, she said clearly, no longer requiring Tiana's translation. Rebecca swallowed visibly. Yes, ma'am. They're expecting you in the Vermilion Room. As they crossed the lobby toward the hotel's main conference space, William, the concierge who had once refused Milling's red envelope, approached with a deep bow. Madame Zhou, may I escort you to the meeting? That won't be necessary, Milling replied coolly. I know exactly where I'm going. The Vermilion Room, named for its rich red wall coverings and dark wood paneling, had been set up for a formal meeting. Around a massive mahogany table sat 9 people, 7 men and 2 women, all in expensive suits, all wearing expressions ranging from wary to openly hostile. At the head of the table, a chair sat conspicuously empty, Mr. Eaton's usual place. Ms. Zhou, said an older man with silver hair and rimless glasses. I'm Bradford Wells, chairman of the board for Regal Holdings. We appreciate your willingness to meet. Milling took in the scene without sitting. Where is Mr. Eaton? He's been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of these discussions. Wells replied carefully. Please have a seat. I'll stand for now, Milling said. This is my interpreter and assistant, Tiana Jackson. She'll be joining us. A murmur of objection rose from several board members. This is a confidential meeting, protested a thin woman with a severe bob. Having a hotel employee present is inappropriate. Ms. Jackson is no longer your employee, Milling corrected. She works for me, and she stays, or I leave, along with the evidence I've gathered and the 15 journalists waiting for my statement outside. The board members exchanged glances, and Wells nodded reluctantly. Very well. Please, both of you sit. Once seated, Milling opened her briefcase and removed a stack of documents, placing them carefully on the table. I assume you've all read the article in the Tribune and reviewed the evidence my legal team submitted to the court. We have, Wells confirmed. And while some of the allegations are concerning, we believe there may be misinterpretations of historical events. Not allegations. Facts. Miling's voice remained steady. My grandmother, Zhang Meilin, was the original owner of this land and a founding investor in the hotel project. She was systematically defrauded by your predecessors, Thompson, Phillips, and Eaton, using forged documents and exploiting anti-Chinese sentiment during a period when she had limited legal recourse. That's a very serious claim, said a younger board member, and one that occurred, if true, long before any of us were involved with the Regal. Yet you've all profited from it. Tiana pointed out quietly. All eyes turned to her, several narrowing in displeasure at her intervention. And who exactly are you again? Asked the woman with the severe bob. Someone who witnessed firsthand how this hotel continues to operate on principles of exclusion and prejudice. Tiana replied evenly. Someone who saw Madame Zhou deliberately misunderstood, mocked, and ultimately threatened when she came seeking justice. Wells cleared his throat uncomfortably. The board does not condone any mistreatment of guests, and if Mr. Eaton acted inappropriately, Mr. Eaton is merely continuing the tradition established by his grandfather. Miling interrupted. But I didn't come here to debate history. I came to resolve it. She began laying out documents on the table. Copies of the property deeds showing her grandmother's name, the notarized confession from James Thompson, photographs of the hidden suite with its unmistakable Chinese design elements, and finally, the matched pair of jade pendants, phoenix and dragon. These are the facts, Miling said simply. Your choice now is whether to acknowledge them publicly and work toward an equitable resolution, or to fight a losing battle in court while your reputation and stock value plummet. The boardroom fell silent as the members exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, Wells spoke. What exactly are you proposing, Ms. Zhou? Recognition, restoration, and restitution, Miling replied without hesitation. My grandmother's name acknowledged in the hotel's official history, the hidden suite restored and preserved as a heritage site, and 25% ownership of the Regal returned to the Zhang family trust, the original percentage my grandmother held before it was stolen. Outcries erupted around the table. 25%? That's outrageous. The statute of limitations expired decades ago. This is nothing but a shakedown. Wells raised a hand for silence. Perhaps we could discuss a more modest settlement. A financial compensation package, an honorary plaque in the lobby. This isn't negotiable, Miling said calmly. I have spent 20 years and millions of dollars tracing my family's legacy. I'm not interested in symbolic gestures or quiet payoffs. Either we restore what was taken, or the courts will decide, with all the attendant publicity. Before Wells could respond, the boardroom door burst open, and Mr. Eaton stormed in, his face flushed with anger. This is absurd, he shouted, ignoring the chairman's protest. You can't seriously be considering legitimizing these ridiculous claims. This woman has manipulated the press, turned our staff against us, and now she's threatening the board. Mr. Eaton, you were instructed not to attend this meeting, Wells said firmly. I have as much right to be here as this opportunist. Eaton spat, glaring at Miling. My family built this hotel. Our name is synonymous with the Regal brand. And now you're going to let her waltz in and claim ownership based on some ancient grudge? Miling regarded him coolly. Your grandfather stole what he couldn't build himself. That's the truth your family has been hiding for 3 generations. You have no proof that would stand up in court, Eaton insisted, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed his features. In response, Miling simply slid forward a document that had remained hidden beneath the others, a forensic handwriting analysis. Comparing George Eaton Sr.'s signature on legitimate documents with the clearly forged signatures on the property transfers from Zhang Meilin. Modern science makes it much harder to hide historical fraud. Tiana observed quietly as Eaton stared at the damning evidence. The boardroom door opened again. This time, a distinguished older woman entered, elegant, petite, with snow-white hair and the dignified bearing that comes from a lifetime of quiet resilience. I remember her, the woman said in a clear voice, pointing to a photograph of Zhang Meilin that lay among the documents. I was just a girl then, but I remember her. Clearly, she lived in the building that stood here before the hotel. She gave my family shelter when no one else would rent to Chinese. The room fell silent as the woman approached the table, her eyes fixed on Miling. My name is Grace Wong. I was 10 years old when your grandmother helped my family find an apartment, after we were evicted for being Chinese. She stood up to the landlords who refused us. She told my father, "We must support each other because this country will not support us yet." I never forgot her kindness, or what happened to her afterward. Tears gleamed in Miling's eyes as Grace continued. They drove her away with threats and lies. Everyone in Chinatown knew, but no one could help. We had no voice then, no power. She turned to face the board members. But we do now, and we are watching what you decide today. The weight of history filled the room, rendering even Eaton temporarily speechless. Wells looked around at his fellow board members, reading the shifting sentiment in their expressions. "I believe," he said carefully, "that we should recess to consider Ms. Zhou's proposal in detail. Perhaps we could reconvene tomorrow after consulting with our legal team." "No more delays," Miling said firmly. "You've had 70 years to consider this injustice. I want your answer now." What followed was unprecedented in the Regal's corporate history, an impromptu board vote conducted in full view of outsiders. Wells called each member by name, asking for their position on Miling's demands. One by one, they voted, some reluctantly, some with obvious relief at finally addressing the long-buried scandal. When the final tally was counted, the result was clear: 6 in favor, 3 against. "The board acknowledges the claim of the Zhang family," Wells announced formally. "Mr. Eaton is hereby removed from his position, effective immediately. Ms. Zhou will be recognized as the rightful owner of a 25% stake in the Regal Hotel, with all associated rights and privileges. Our legal team will draft the necessary documents for signing tomorrow." Eaton's face contorted with fury. "This is insanity. You can't just— It's done, Richard," Wells cut him off firmly. "Your family's debt has finally come due." As the meeting concluded, hotel guests, who had gathered in the lobby with phones recording, captured the historic moment. Miling Zhou, accompanied by Tiana and the elderly Grace Wong, emerged from the Vermilion Room not as a supplicant, but as an owner, her face serene with the quiet satisfaction of long-sought justice. Behind them, visible through the open door, Richard Eaton slumped in a chair, the weight of 3 generations of deception finally collapsing upon his shoulders. In the days that followed, as legal documents were prepared and ownership transferred, Tiana found herself cornered in a quiet hallway by Heather, her former housekeeping colleague. The once hostile woman looked different somehow, humbled, perhaps, or simply thoughtful. "I didn't understand," Heather said quietly. "What was happening, what it meant. I thought you were just getting special treatment." She paused, struggling with the words. "I do now. Understand, I mean." Tiana studied her for a moment, then offered a small nod. "It wasn't about me, or even about Miling. It was about setting something right that had been wrong for too long." "Yeah," Heather agreed softly. "I get that now." As they parted ways, Tiana felt a subtle shift, not just in Heather, but in the hotel itself. Something long buried had been unearthed, acknowledged, and in that acknowledgement, a kind of healing had begun. The culmination came a week later, when Miling, now officially recognized as cultural trustee and part owner of the Regal, led a small procession through the previously hidden passageway. The Phoenix Wing, her grandmother's creation, was no longer sealed away but open for a special ceremony. Journalists captured the moment as Miling walked through the restored space, now cleaned and properly lit, but otherwise preserved exactly as her grandmother had left it. She stopped before the portrait of Zhang Meilin, reaching up to touch the newly installed plaque beneath it that acknowledged her as founding investor and designer of the Regal Hotel, 1938 to 1951. "The truth cannot stay buried forever," Miling said to the assembled cameras. "Today, we restore not just a name to a building, but a chapter to history that was deliberately erased." Standing beside her, Tiana felt the weight of the moment. How a single connection, a shared language, had unleashed a cascade of truth that could no longer be contained. As a maid who had become an interpreter of more than just words, she had helped translate injustice into justice, erasure into restoration. 6 weeks after the confrontation in the boardroom, the Regal Hotel had undergone a transformation that went far deeper than its newly renovated lobby. Under Meiling Zhou's influence as cultural trustee and minority owner, the state luxury establishment had begun evolving into something more vibrant, more inclusive, and paradoxically, more authentic to its original vision. The irony, Meiling remarked to Tiana as they reviewed applications for the newly created position of Cultural Heritage Director, is that my grandmother always intended this place to be a bridge between East and West, a space where both traditions were honored. Equally, by erasing her, they diminished their own creation. The hotel staff, too, had changed. Some had left, unable or unwilling to adapt to the new management philosophy. Others, like Heather, had surprised everyone by embracing the changes with unexpected enthusiasm. And new faces had appeared, a more diverse workforce recruited specifically for their language skills, cultural knowledge, and commitment to the hotel's evolved mission. All staff members now underwent mandatory training in cultural sensitivity and hospitality history, a program Tiana had helped design based on her unique perspective as someone who had worked both sides of the hotel hierarchy. It's not about making people feel guilty, she explained to a group of new hires. It's about understanding how exclusion happens, often without conscious intent, and how to create genuine welcome instead. The once empty tea lounge had been transformed into the centerpiece of the hotel's cultural renaissance. Renamed the Phoenix Room, it now featured rotating exhibitions of Chinese art and daily tea ceremonies conducted by a master brought in from Shanghai. The room's centerpiece was a magnificent display case containing artifacts from the hidden suite, including photographs of Zhang Meilin and her business partners in happier times, before betrayal fractured their relationship. Each afternoon at 4, guests gathered for a special ceremony hosted jointly by Meiling and Tiana, a symbolic bridge building that honored both the Chinese tradition of tea appreciation and the Western practice of afternoon refreshment. This isn't just performance, Meiling had insisted when planning the ritual. It must be authentic education, an experience that transforms how people understand both cultures. Guests responded enthusiastically to the changes. Bookings increased, particularly among international travelers and those interested in cultural heritage tourism. The New York Times Style section featured a glowing piece titled "The Regal Renaissance: How Historical Justice Created Cultural Gold," highlighting the hotel's transformation from a standard luxury establishment to a unique cultural destination. What Zhang Meilin envisioned in 1940, her granddaughter has finally realized in 2025, the article concluded. A true meeting of East and West, rooted in historical truth rather than appropriation. On a crisp fall morning, Tiana stood in her new office, a far cry from the housekeeping closets where she had once organized cleaning supplies. As the hotel's newly appointed cultural liaison and assistant to the Heritage Preservation Board, she had responsibilities that extended far beyond her original role as Meiling's translator, but a knock at her door interrupted her review of proposals for the upcoming Lunar New Year celebrations. Looking up, she saw Meiling, elegant as always but somehow softer now that the battle had been won. "Your family is here," Meiling announced with a smile. Tiana's heart leapt. Her mother, Dr. Elaine Jackson, had finally returned from her extended visit with Tiana's brother and was eager to see the changes in her daughter's life. They walked together to the lobby, where Dr. Jackson stood examining the new historical exhibit with professional interest. "Mom," Tiana called, quickening her pace. Dr. Jackson turned, her face lighting up at the sight of her daughter. They embraced warmly, the older woman holding Tiana at arm's length afterward to study her. "Look at you," she said proudly. "Cultural liaison, board assistant. My little girl who complained about learning Mandarin is now making history with it." "Hardly making history," Tiana demurred. "I disagree," Meiling interjected, extending her hand to Dr. Jackson. "Your daughter helped restore a crucial piece of history that others tried to erase. There's no small achievement in that." Dr. Jackson nodded, understanding the weight of what had transpired. "I always taught my children that languages aren't just skills, they're bridges. Sometimes they connect us to other people, sometimes to hidden truths." As they toured the hotel, showing Dr. Jackson the restored Phoenix Wing and the revitalized cultural programs, they passed a film crew setting up in the main lobby. "What's happening here?" Dr. Jackson asked. "Local news feature," Tiana explained. They're interviewing staff about the changes. She glanced at her watch. Actually, I'm scheduled to speak with them in a few minutes. The young reporter, eager and somewhat nervous, positioned Tiana near the historical display for better lighting. We're focusing on how the Regal case is inspiring other historical justice campaigns, she explained. What would you say was the key factor that made this particular effort successful? Tiana considered the question carefully. Justice didn't come from power, she finally said. It came from listening. One person who took the time to truly hear another person's story. That was the catalyst. Everything else followed from that. Simple human connection. The reporter looked surprised by the depth of the answer. That's not what I expected. Most people talk about the legal strategy or the media pressure. Those were tools, Tiana acknowledged. But the essential element was recognition, seeing someone who had been rendered invisible, hearing a truth that had been silenced. Later that evening, after her family had departed for dinner, Tiana found Milling in the Phoenix room, examining a display case containing the matched jade pendants, Phoenix and Dragon, now reunited after decades of separation. A gift for you, Milling said without preamble, removing the Phoenix pendant and placing it in Tiana's palm. You helped it rise again. I can't accept this, Tiana protested. It's a family heirloom. You are family now, Milling said simply. Not by blood, but by choice and action. My grandmother would approve. Tiana accepted the pendant with profound gratitude, understanding the weight of trust and respect it represented. Unnoticed by either woman, a familiar figure watched from across the street. Michael Lee, grandson of Warren Phillips and fake journalist, observed the Regal from the tinted windows of a black SUV. His expression was unreadable as he watched guests entering and exiting the transformed hotel. We underestimated them, he said to someone on his phone. The damage is contained to the Regal for now, but if they start looking at the other properties. He fell silent, listening to instructions. Understood. We'll wait and watch. He pulled away from the curb, disappearing into Manhattan traffic. A reminder that while one battle had been won, larger wars over historical justice continued in boardrooms and courthouses across the city. 2 months later, Milling stood before a gathering of community leaders, business owners, and media representatives in the Regal's grand ballroom. Behind her, a presentation screen displayed the logo of the newly established Zhang Cultural Heritage Foundation. What happened to my grandmother was not unique, she began. Across this country, immigrant families had their properties taken, their businesses appropriated, their achievements erased. Not just Chinese Americans, but many others. Today, we launch an initiative to research, document, and where possible, rectify these historical injustices. She outlined an ambitious program of grants, legal support, and educational initiatives designed to uncover similar stories across the United States and support families seeking recognition or restoration. This is not about dwelling in the past, she emphasized. It's about creating a more honest future, one where success is built on truth rather than erasure. As applause filled the room, Tiana watched from the side, the Phoenix pendant warm against her skin. In just a few months, her life had transformed from the invisibility of service work to a position of influence and purpose, all because she had paused one evening to return a dropped trinket and speak in a language few expected her to know. Later that night, long after the guests had departed and the hotel had quieted, Tiana walked alone through the restored Phoenix wing. She stopped at the window where Milling's grandmother had once stood, gazing out at a city that had simultaneously welcomed and betrayed her. Touching the jade pendant at her throat, Tiana whispered in Mandarin the words that had become the unofficial motto of their unlikely journey. Your story wasn't lost. It was just waiting for someone to hear it. The phoenix gleamed in the soft light, its wings outstretched as if ready to take flight. No longer a symbol of what had been lost, but of what had been found, what had been restored, and what might yet be reclaimed. What treasures of justice remain buried in our world, waiting for someone brave enough to listen? If this story of courage and reclaimed legacy moved you, please like, subscribe, and share to help more silenced voices be heard.